I always thought the worst thing about this job would be the blood. Turns out, it's the quiet. That heavy silence a room has after something bad happens inside it. The way the air feels like it remembers. After a while, you start to recognize it. You walk through a doorway, and your body knows before your brain does. That night, it started with my phone buzzing at 2:13 a.m. I was half asleep, face stuck to the pillow, when the ringtone cut through the dark. I blinked at the screen. Detective Morales. Of course. I answered with a rough, "Yeah, this is Crane," and listened. She told me there was a scene up in the North End, a fancy townhouse on Melrose. She called it an easy job. Almost no blood, she said. Routine. I could hear the fatigue in her voice, the way you only get after too many years seeing too many bad things. I said I'd be there. I hung up, sat on the edge of the bed for a second, and just breathed. That old familiar weight settled on my chest. I checked my contacts and called my partner, Evan. It rang and rang, went to voicemail. I left a short message, told him about the job, told him to hit me back. He didn't, so I dragged on my work clothes, grabbed my keys, and went out into the cold. The city at that hour always feels wrong. Not dead, not asleep, just empty in a way that makes you feel like you're trespassing. My van sat under the streetlight, white paint dulled with stains and scratches from 1,000 jobs. In the rear view, I glanced at the neat rows of supplies behind me. Sprayers, chemicals, biohazard bags, everything in its place. It's funny, people think my work is about cleaning, but really, it's about control, putting the world back in order after someone tears it apart. The drive to Melrose felt longer than it was. By the time I turned onto the street, red and blue lights were already washing over the narrow row of townhouses. The place I was headed to looked expensive even from the curb. Tall, narrow black front door, clean little concrete steps. Yellow tape stretched across the entrance like a warning label. 2 patrol cars, one at each end of the block, boxed in the world so that everything beyond them felt less real. An officer lifted the tape for me. As I ducked under, I heard one of them say to the other, in a low voice, meant for his buddy, not for me, "Easy job, barely any blood." That word again, easy. I went up the steps, toolkit in hand. There was a faint reddish smear on the top step, marked with a little plastic evidence tent, thin, almost painted on, not what I see at most scenes. Inside, the first thing that hit me wasn't the usual metallic tang of blood. It was nothing. No copper, no sweat, no stale food or spilled booze, no human chaos, just clean air and the faint scent of wood polish. It smelled like a staged open house. The living room opened up in front of me, and for a second, I just stood there. Someone had spent a lot of money to make that room look like a magazine spread. Neutral-colored couch, geometric rug, glass coffee table, lamps, article. The whole thing looked more like a model unit than a real home, and everything was placed. The throw blanket on the couch was draped at a perfect angle. The remote sat parallel to the edge of the table. The curtain ties were symmetrical. The lampshade was tilted just enough to direct light across the floor. In the middle of the hardwood floor, a single thin streak of blood curved toward the hallway, then stopped. No spatter, no pooling, just one graceful line of red. I remember thinking, this feels wrong. Morales met me near the wall. She looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. She explained the basics. Older male victim, found upstairs in the bedroom, throat cut, minimal blood, body already gone to the coroner. Owner of the house out of the country, sublet situation, still sorting out who technically lived here. She didn't say much beyond that. Nothing about suspects, nothing about motive. Just that I should do my job, photograph anything odd, and call if I found something I didn't like. Which turned out to be pretty much everything. After she left me alone, I went through my usual routine. Gloves, mask, booties, goggles, everything between me and whatever I was about to kneel in. But as I started to follow the blood streak, my mind wouldn't settle into that familiar rhythm. The streak was thin, consistent, almost like someone had dragged a brush along the floor. It darkened slightly near the center of the room, then tapered off just before the hallway, like whoever was bleeding had decided to stop right there. I crouched, let the enzyme solution soak into the stain, and while it did, I kept scanning. On the coffee table, there was a ceramic mug shattered into pieces. The shards weren't scattered randomly the way a real fall would do it. They curved out from the center in a loose spiral. Thick cluster in the middle, thinning toward the edges. Like a design. No coffee stains, no liquid, no sticky ring on the glass. I felt this little prickle at the base of my skull. A quiet, that's not right. I started thinking of the room, less like a place something happened, and more like a picture someone had arranged. That thought wouldn't let go. I followed the narrow hallway, lined with needlessly expensive black and white art, up the stairs to the second floor and into the master bedroom. They'd stripped the bed. The mattress was bare, with a dull, rusty stain in the center, maybe the size of a dinner plate. That was where they said the victim had been. A throat cut, and that was all the blood. I've seen throat wounds before. The body doesn't just politely bleed into one circle and call it a night. I checked the walls. No spray, no fine mist on the headboard. I checked under the bed. Nothing but dust. I ran my UV lights along the baseboards, and finally, I saw something. Perfectly curved little arcs of residue, neat, controlled. Not like random impact, more like someone had flicked something and then carefully cleaned most of it away, leaving just enough for a trained eye to find, like a signature. I felt that sinking, hollow feeling you get when you realize you're not walking into chaos, you're walking into a design. The drawers in the nightstands were empty, but in one of them I found a single folded tissue, folded long ways 3 times, then in half into a tidy rectangle. That's how I fold paper towels before I clean, always have. Just a habit, a little ritual, neat and square. My fingers hovered over it. Could be nothing, I thought. Lots of people fold things. Still, I recognized my own pattern staring back at me. I picked it up with tweezers. It was clean. No blood. No obvious reason to be there. I bagged it anyway, feeling like someone had just poked me in the chest. When I closed the drawer, something thin fluttered out from underneath the nightstand and landed on the floor. A photo, face down. I picked it up, turned it over, and my stomach clenched. It was a photo from years ago. Another expensive living room, another clean-up job. I was standing in the middle of the room in a white disposable suit, mask pulled down, looking tired and younger. Next to me, arm around my shoulder, big stupid grin on his face, was Evan. We were surrounded by the aftermath of a fall. A woman who had hit her head in her kitchen. I remembered that day. I remembered the sweat, the pressure to finish before the family came back. I didn't remember the room looking as perfect as it did in that photo. The blanket, the lamp, the glass pieces on the floor, arranged. Someone had drawn a thin red circle around my face in the picture. On the back, in black ink, one word, H.I. My hands went clammy inside the gloves. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. This scene, this room, it was talking to me. The more I looked, the more I saw it. Patterns, choices, little details that meant nothing to anyone else but landed in my brain like sharp stones. In the kitchen downstairs, everything was spotless. Didn't look like people cooked there at all. On the island, perfectly centered, sat a cardboard coffee cup from the small shop near our office. Not one of the big chains, our spot. The place where the barista knew I always ordered the same thing. Hazelnut mocha, no sugar. My name was scribbled on the sleeve. Crane. Underneath, in smaller letters, no sugar. The cup was empty, bone dry, placed dead center like a prop. I knew instantly it wasn't coincidence. Someone wanted me to see it and think, this is yours, this is you, you belong in this picture. By then, my heartbeat felt like it was in my throat. Back in the living room, one thing kept nagging at me. A framed piece of abstract art on the wall. Something about the way it lined up with the rest of the room felt intentional. I took it down. Behind it was bare wall. But just above where the frame had hung, there was an air vent. Standard white grill. 3 screws matte with age. 1 screw shiny and new. I climbed onto the couch, unscrewed the cover, and reached inside. My fingers closed around a small, cold shape. Camera. Tiny. Black. Lens pointed straight out toward the middle of the room, exactly where I had been standing, where I kept coming back to without even realizing it. The little red light on the back was on. Someone had been watching. Maybe still was. On the back, a strip of masking tape. On the tape, in handwriting I knew better than my own, were the words, "Hope you're doing a thorough job." I didn't need a handwriting analyst to tell me whose letters those were. The lazy loop on the Y, the long tail on the G. I'd seen them on invoices, sticky notes, our whiteboard, random jokes scribbled on coffee lids. Evan. For a moment, all I could do was stand there in the middle of that perfect room, camera in hand, and let the implications sink in. He had been here. He knew about this job before I did. He'd planted a camera, and personal details meant only for me, and he knew exactly how it would look if anyone else found them. That was the part that turned my unease into real fear. Because what does it look like when a professional crime scene cleaner gets called to a nearly bloodless murder scene that has obviously been artificially scrubbed, and then he just happens to find private messages and an old photo, but doesn't tell the police immediately? Looks like he's hiding something. Looks like he didn't just show up after the fact. Looks like he's part of the story. I slipped the camera, bagged, deep into my kit. Same with the photo. Same with the tissue. For better or worse, for that moment, it became my secret. I finished the visible cleanup because not finishing would have drawn suspicion. My body went through the motions, spray, wipe, bag, seal, while my mind replayed the last few weeks with Evan on loop. The missed jobs, the half excuses, the way he'd started acting like the business was just a side thing, something he didn't have to show up for. Had this been what he was doing instead? Building little museums behind my back? By the time I stepped back outside, Morales was leaning against her car, scribbling in a notebook. The sky was still dark, but the edges of dawn were starting to creep in. She asked how bad it was. I told her, truthfully, that I'd seen worse, that it was a strange scene, that it was unusually clean, that the layout felt deliberate. I didn't mention the camera, or the photo, or my name on the coffee cup. She told me to send the invoice. I nodded, walked to my van, and tried not to look like a man about to come apart. I just closed the door when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. A voice I'd known for years came through, casual, familiar. "Man, you sound wrecked," Evan said. "Long night, huh?" My mouth went dry. My fingers tightened on the phone. He asked about the job in this lazy, curious tone, like he was just checking in on any other call-out. He didn't say anything directly incriminating. Didn't confess. Didn't taunt. But the way he let certain words hang had weight. He mentioned the street name. The way Morales had called it an easy job. He laughed, this soft, amused laugh, when I said there was barely any blood. There was no big confession. No, I did it. Nothing I could replay for a cop and say, "See?" It was all implication, in between spaces, things he knew about the scene that he shouldn't, unless he'd been there. The real knife slid in when his voice dropped a little, and he said, almost affectionately, "Don't go home yet. You won't like what you find." Then he hung up. No goodbye, no explanation. Just that. Home for me didn't just mean my apartment. It meant the office. The place above the nail salon, where we kept our files, receipts, maps of old jobs. Evan had keys to both that and my place. We'd never had a reason to question that. Until now. I told myself I was just going to check in. Make sure everything was normal. Maybe find some proof this was all in my head. The strip mall was half asleep when I pulled in. Our office window was dark. No movement. No light. The door upstairs was open a crack. My stomach turned. We never left it like that. I pushed it open, hit the switch, and the lights flashed on. My office had become another exhibit. Our desks, usually cluttered with paperwork, pens, random tools, were bare, completely cleared. Each chair centered perfectly on its plastic mat. Every drawer opened the same distance, like someone measured it. The map of the city on the wall, where we'd marked past jobs with colored push pins, had changed. The pins weren't scattered across neighborhoods anymore. They spelled out 3 letters, CRN, short for Crane Me. In the middle of the room, a roll of clear plastic sheeting stretched across the carpet. On it, one chair facing the door. On the seat, my spare uniform shirt neatly folded, my spare work pants folded across the back, my boots placed in front of the chair, toes pointing toward me like someone had just stepped out of them and vanished. On the wall opposite the chair, rows of photos were taped up. All of me. Job after job, year after year. Me in white suits, in masks pulled down, in gloves. Me scrubbing tile. Me bagging carpets. Me standing in the corner waiting for a coroner to finish. Sometimes you could see a bit of Evan in the corner of the frame. An elbow, a hand, the side of his face. but he'd clearly tried to crop himself out when he printed them. Under each photo, a sticky note, a date and an address, a timeline of my work, a record of every room I'd ever stepped into. For a second, I couldn't breathe. On my desk, where my coffee usually sat, was another cup from the same shop. This one wasn't empty. The smell of hazelnut hit me before I reached the desk. Underneath the cup, another note, company letterhead. Subject, Crane, my first name. Exhibit 2, domestic environment. Below that, in Evan's hand, audiences love a good fall from grace, don't disappoint. And one last line, smaller, like a whisper. They already know your name. Now they just need a reason. Right then, my phone chimed. New email. No name, no subject. Just an attachment. A video. I opened it. Grainy footage, slightly warped, but clear enough. Living room of the Melrose townhouse. Timestamp. An hour earlier. It showed me moving through the room, kneeling to inspect the blood, standing and staring at the mug shards, lifting the coffee cup with my name on it, climbing onto the couch to unscrew the vent, pulling the camera out, reading the tape, bagging it, sliding it into my kit. No audio, just a silent record of me touching everything. The video ended. A single line of text followed. This is what they'll see. My legs went weak. From a distance, with no context, it looked exactly like what someone would expect from a guilty man cleaning his own crime. Professional, calm, efficient, erasing. That was the moment I understood the full shape of what he was building. He wasn't just messing with me. He was constructing a story. Exhibit 1. The almost bloodless townhouse, carefully posed. Exhibit 2. Our office, turned into a shrine to my career, all threaded together by footage of me, doing the only thing I know how to do. Clean. I did call Morales, but fear is a hell of a filter. I told her the scene felt staged, that she should have her guys look for hidden cameras. I suggested the layout was more like a set than an actual crime site. I left out the personal stuff, the photo of me and Evan, the coffee cup with my order, the note in his handwriting, the office scene, the video. Somewhere between survival instinct and denial, I decided I needed more proof before I threw his name on the table and risked them not believing me. She said they'd go back through the house. She also told me, in that careful cop way, not to leave town. Not suspicious exactly, not yet, but not nothing. That day, I didn't go home. I parked the van in an empty lot and sat there until the sun burned up the sky. I watched people go to work, watched them come and go, and thought about stories. Evan always liked true crime. Not in the casual way people watch documentaries. He studied them, watched how each case was told, how the narrative formed, how the audience picked villains and victims based on what details got highlighted. He used to talk about controlling the frame. At the time, I thought it was just him being dramatic. Now, sitting in a van that smelled like bleach and old fear, I realized he'd meant it literal. Control the frame. Control what the cops see. Control what the camera sees. Control the story. The next night, the story broke. The news ran a segment. Body found in a luxury townhouse. Unusual crime scene. Little blood. Questions about what really happened. They showed the street. The tape. Morales in silhouette. No shots from inside, but the reporter repeated one phrase. Carefully cleaned. Then they put my company's logo on the screen. Crane Biohazard Services. My last name. They didn't say I was a suspect. They didn't have to. People see crime scene cleaner next to almost no blood, and their brains start connecting dots as if they were born detectives. Evan was right about one thing. They knew my name now. They just needed a reason. Not long after that, another message came in. No caller ID, just another anonymous email with another video link. This time it wasn't the townhouse or the office. It was a different room, low ceiling, bare bulb, dirty walls, probably a basement somewhere. Hard to say. In the center of the floor, more plastic sheeting. One chair. A person slumped in it, head hanging forward, hands tied behind their back. The face was blurred, not by the camera, deliberately blurred in editing. Pinned to the person's chest was a card, my business card. The camera circled them slowly, lingering on the card, then on the walls. The walls were covered with photographs, not just of me this time, but of other people, clients, neighbors, strangers. Some from jobs, some from surveillance maybe. All of them had their eyes scratched out with heavy strokes of ink or marker. The video ended on a shot of a doorway. Above it, spray painted in bright, ugly red. Exhibit 3. Audience participation. Under it, smaller, coming soon. I just sat there, watching the frozen last frame, hearing my own pulse in my ears. He wasn't stopping at framing me. He was escalating. He was turning everything into a show. He'd started with a message only I would understand, then moved to a public stage where the news could start shaping opinion. Now he was hinting at future scenes involving random people, victims, witnesses, who knows. He'd brought me into the museum as the subject. Now he was inviting everyone else in as the audience. I realized something ugly then. As much as I wanted to clear my name, to run to the nearest precinct and dump everything on the table, there was no guarantee it would stop him in time. All I had were stage scenes and carefully edited clips that made me look worse. Handwriting I recognized but couldn't prove. My word against his absence. And in the meantime, Exhibit 3 was coming soon. In some unknown room, to some unknown person. Maybe someone I'd never met. Maybe someone I loved. I'd never felt so trapped by my own skill set. All I know how to do is show up after the worst moment in someone's life and erase the visible part of it. That's my whole thing. That's my contribution to the universe. And now that same skill was being used to paint me as the one who causes those moments. I was stuck between two awful choices. Hide and hope he gets bored. Or keep working, keep stepping into rooms, knowing any one of them might be another exhibit waiting for me. So I did the only thing that made any wicked sense. I kept going. I still take calls. The cops still dial the number they know when they have a mess they don't want to look at anymore. People still die in frantic, stupid, brutal ways. Family members still don't know what to do with the carpets and the walls after the body's gone. So yeah, I still show up. But now, every time I pull up to a scene and see that tape, hear someone say, "Easy job, not much blood," my neck tightens. I step inside slower. I scan harder. Is the blood where it should be? Or did someone paint it? Are there objects lying the way they fall? Or are they posed? Is there dust where dust should be? Are there cameras hidden in vents, in smoke detectors, behind frames? Sometimes it's real. Sometimes it's a kitchen where a man put a gun in his mouth and changed his family forever. Sometimes it's a bathroom where a woman slipped, hit the edge of the tub, and never woke up. Those rooms have their own terrible logic. You can feel it in the randomness. But sometimes, there's a chair placed just a little too precisely. A cup centered on a counter that should be cluttered. A tissue folded my way. A little note wedged where only I would look. Thorough work. Nice form. Good angle on that one. Nothing direct enough to hand to a cop and say, "This proves it's him." Just enough that I know he's been there. Watching, curating, waiting. He's turned my life into a gallery of near misses. In my office, I left the photos on the wall. Maybe it's stupid. Maybe I should have torn them down, burned them, walked away. But I need the reminder. I need to see the timeline, see where I've been, see how long he's been collecting me without my knowledge. There's one note in particular I can't make myself throw out. I found it taped under a drawer a week after that first night, written in the same handwriting that's been chasing me from room to room. Good cleaners understand. The first pass never gets everything. On the back, see you in the next room. So yeah, when I stand over a stain now, I don't just think about angle and dilution ratios. I think about framing, about how someone like Evan can twist perspective until a guy who spent his life cleaning up horror starts to look like the one causing it. You're hearing this as a story. To you, it's maybe creepy, maybe interesting. To me, it's a trap I'm still walking through in slow motion. One scene at a time. One easy job at a time. And every time I strap on my gloves and step over the tape, I ask myself the same question. Is this it? Is this the room he finally designed to close the door on me for good? The staged scene that stops being just a message and becomes the last exhibit in a museum I never meant to build.